Welcome to Real Talk Real Estate, the show where we cover how to build wealth in real estate with no fluff, no BS, and no sales pitches. I'm David Green, and I've been doing this for over 10 years. I've seen the ups, the downs, and everything in between. This is the show where we pull back the curtain and show it to you too. So if you want to build wealth through real estate or you just love learning about it, you found your home. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Real Talk Real Estate. I am your host, David Green, and this is the show where we pull back the curtain and share stories, details, and insight into the crazy world of real estate business and investing. Today's show, we're going to be talking about if you should and how to pay off your debt, how to leverage opportunities and structures and deals, how to structure your rentals for maximum profits, and how to overall build wealth through real estate using leverage. So if you're looking to build wealth, change your career, or just learn about the craziness that goes on behind the scenes in the business, you've come to the right place. All right, before we get to our first question, remember, I need you to help me put together future shows. So head over to davidgreen24.com/ask and submit your question so we can have you on a future podcast. All right, let's get to our first question from Chan Mark in Houston, Texas.
Hi, David. So between my spouse and I, and we have a kid, just trying to figure out what's the smartest way to prioritize with paying our debt, as far as we're making anywhere between $25,000 to $30,000. Our bills are about $10,000 to $12,000 a month, and just trying to figure out what's the fastest way. Fastest fun, slowest painful. So just trying to figure out what the fastest way is to pay off $75,000 to $80,000 of credit card debt, and to either take out a home equity loan or just focus on the avalanche way to pay the credit cards. I don't know. I just been doing a lot of research, YouTubing, not knowing which way how I should pay this off really fast. So would love some help here.
All right, Chan, great question. Let's break this thing down. When I was new in the real estate agent business, I remember asking which CRM is the best CRM. And the answer was whichever one you're going to use the most. You see the pattern that I'm getting at here? So in my mind, the way that I make success over things that are difficult, of which budgeting is still one of them, I have to budget in my companies, I have to budget in my personal life, I have to budget in my businesses, I have to budget in my portfolio. There's always budgeting. If you put time, effort, energy, money into something, you can't put it into something else because resources aren't unlimited. So how do we make these decisions? It's going to start with making it a game. That's what works for me. If I don't feel like what I'm doing is fun or rewarding, it's very hard to make myself do it. So I track my workouts. I track how much weight I'm lifting and how many times I lift it. That makes weightlifting more fun because I always see that I'm progressing. A lot of people find that when they start tracking what they eat very, very differently. I think the same thing's going to go with your finances. How do you make this a game, right? So there's two ways that you can pay off debt, and this comes right out of the book, Pillars of Wealth. You can increase how much you make, and you can decrease how much you spend. Both of those will give you a delta of how much money you have left over. The more you have left over, the more you can put towards that debt. Now, once you start making progress on paying off the debt, as you pay off individual debts, that's one less payment you have to make. That's more money you can put towards paying off the rest of the debt. This is called the snowball method that I believe that you referred to as the avalanche. It's the same idea. That makes it more fun. So in Spartan League, all of our new members that join my mastermind, they make a budget for themselves. They fill out a spreadsheet that says how much money they're going to spend on individual things, and then they stick to it. Just like somebody who wants to eat healthy that day has to ask themselves how many calories they need for what they're trying to accomplish, decide what they're going to eat at the beginning of the day, and then stick to that eating schedule. That will get you fit. Eating whatever you feel like in the moment at the time will create chaos in your diet. I think that's why so many of us, particularly in America, struggle with what we're eating or what we're doing or what we're spending our money on. Our culture has trained us to do what you feel. We've elevated how we feel and our feelings to this point of almost a God that we worship. So if you feel down, you want to find a person to make you feel better. If you feel angry, you want to find a person to blame for why you feel angry. Well, a lot of people, when they feel hopeless or like they don't have purpose, they go spend money on something. It's called retail therapy. Makes people feel a lot better. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people listening have different demons that they're fighting regarding their own spending or their own diet or whatever their goals are. We're not all the same. We're not all triggered by the same things, but we all fall into the same patterns. So here's what I'd like you to do first. How do we make this fun? How do you make it a game? If you're spending $10,000 to $12,000 a month, I want you to write down where all that money's going. You can use apps like Rocket Money, or even just going through your bank statement or your credit card statement and see where all your money is being spent. See how many times you're eating out and say, we're only going to eat out once a week. The rest of the money goes to groceries. Once you've got an amount budgeted for groceries, your game becomes, how do I stretch this into as far as it can go? Can I go shopping at discount grocery stores instead of expensive ones? Now, what I found whenever I started to do this was I started to feel sorry for myself. And most people struggle with it. I didn't work this hard in life and I didn't get this far to have to eat at discount groceries. It's a toxic thought. You're not eating moldy food. You're just shopping at a place where the stuff is cheaper. Now, here's the thing. If you lived in Thailand or Vietnam, you would think that our discount grocery stores in America are luxury stores and you'd be thrilled to eat there. So try to remember that a lot of these thoughts we have that make us a victim come from comparing ourselves to someone that's better than us. But if you compare yourself to someone doing worse than you, you'll feel like a king. It's a little trick that you can play so you don't feel bad for yourself all the time. I do this constantly. Do I drive a Ferrari? No, I still drive a Toyota Camry. Do I sometimes feel bad for myself? Yeah, I'm a human and I can fall into that same way of thinking. You know how I get out of it? I remind myself that 80 years ago, they didn't have a car nearly that comfortable. 400 years ago, the richest man in the world didn't get all the creature comforts that I have in this car. Isn't that crazy? There was a time that Christopher Columbus was sent across the world to get spices. They didn't even have spices for cooking. Today, I can go to any restaurant I want and get any kind of cuisine cooked by expert chefs in that cuisine. We live at an amazing time to be a human. And if you keep reminding yourself of that, it can make it easier to stop spending money on dumb stuff. These are just some of the games and the psychological tricks that I play in my own head to stay on budget. Now, once you've figured out how to decrease how much you're spending every single month, you want to try to figure out how to increase how much you're making. What I've found in my experience is that there's actually a pretty straightforward process to making more money. You have to bring more value to the workplace. What stops us from doing that? Well, just like there's things that stop us from exercising harder, from working out with more intensity, you could call it laziness, you could call it lack of confidence, you could call it lack of drive. All of those same psychological things affect how hard we work at our jobs. If you ask most young men, why are they working at GameStop? Why are they working at Walmart? They get real honest. They would say it's because I'm comfortable. I don't have the confidence to go take another job. What if I fail? What if I get there and they expect more of me than I want to give? You start to feel abused when someone's making you do something that you don't want to do. I just want you to think about this. If you show up and someone in the military is forcing you to do 100 push-ups in a row, it's easy to call that abuse. It's not fair. You didn't want to do those push-ups and they have force and they're making you do it. You start to see yourself as a victim. But what if you're paying a personal trainer to get you in shape and that same person makes you do 100 push-ups in a row? That person is now looked at as an ally, a friend, and a resource. You're paying them to have them help you. It's the exact same action being taken. You know what the difference is? Our own attitude about it. When we say, I am willing to go through this process, I want to go through this process, the pain that we feel, the sacrifices that we make, don't feel like pain or sacrifices. They feel like privileges. I am privileged to have a personal trainer help me to do 100 push-ups in a row. And when I can do 100 push-ups in a row, I feel really good about myself. That is a privilege. Versus I was enlisted in the military against my will. I was drafted, and now my boot camp instructor is yelling at me and forcing me to do things I don't want to do. We start using all these modern day terms. This is toxic. This is abusive. This is unfair. It's not right. The only difference is our attitude, and specifically how much we have agreed to take a part in this process of self-improvement. Bringing this back to making money. This is the reality, everybody. Every day, my companies, the David Green Team, the One Brokerage, Spartan League, Coast to Coast Getaways, Coast to Coast Real Estate, whatever my own portfolio, whatever I'm working on, my short-term rentals, my long-term rentals, they require more of me than what I can do. Every single week, I have some employee unhappy about something they have to deal with. There's a tenant that's complaining. There's a plumbing that isn't working. I don't have the skills to handle that, which means I have to grow. Just like I wanted to lift that weight 15 times and I was only strong enough to lift it 13 times, I have to admit in humility that David Green was not enough. And then you know what? I got to get stronger. In fact, the first step in becoming stronger is acknowledging that you are not enough. And instead of feeling shame about that and running away from those feelings of, oh, I'm not enough, embrace that you're not enough. Embrace that the person making you do the push-ups is helping you. Be grateful that you're in the position where you're doing push-ups instead of in the position where you're on the outside looking in, wishing you could be a badass in the military. Now, before I owned the companies and had to deal with this, I worked in somebody else's companies and had to deal with this. When you willingly take it upon your own self to adapt and mold to your environment to get better, you're making yourself a servant of humanity and others, and in other words, the marketplace. That makes you better. That brings more value to the marketplace. And that allows you to ask for more money or be rewarded with more money. And when you hit a ceiling where you're not being given more money, but your skills have improved that much, you can go find a better job where they'll pay you more. I promise you, everyone, this is how it works. You get promoted when you're better than everyone around you. I think a lot of America has lost that drive. This is what made our country great. American ingenuity, American hard work. The men in the 20s that were getting up and building steel skyscrapers in our big cities. The people that sacrificed their own comfort and their bodies to make a great country. We've just kind of drifted away from years and years of letting technology do the hard work. So let's bring this all back to your question here, Chan. First off, I'm hoping you understand it's a mindset shift that has to happen before a practical approach. Second, I want you to make it a game. Third, I want you to focus on two things: how you spend less and how you make more. You spend less by being more disciplined and having a plan. You make more by working harder every single day than you did the day before. And if you say, I'm just not motivated to do it, you got to find a different job where you are motivated. And lastly, the thing that stops you and me and all of us from being better at this is entitlement. It's the belief that we shouldn't have to work harder, that someone else should be giving it to us, that there's a shortcut somewhere. It doesn't work in fitness, it doesn't work in romantic relationships, and it doesn't work in finance. And if you're hearing this and you're feeling triggered, you're feeling feelings and emotions of anger, I want you to know I care about you, and that's why I'm saying this. I feel those sometimes too, and I let them go. It's always better to take responsibility and to understand that oftentimes when we have a strong emotional response, we are being triggered, and that means there's a stronghold in our life that's being challenged. And entitlement is often that stronghold. The belief that we should have more because we're American, or because we live in 2024, or whatever reason we have that we deserve more. It's a really, really bad attitude to get into, and it keeps you a slave. Now, I want to commend you for asking this question, and I want to also let you know I'm sorry that you're in the position. I'm sure you're super stressed out. $70,000 to $80,000 of consumer debt is probably keeping you awake at night, and that is where my advice is coming from. My motive is to help you get to the point that you're sleeping soundly at night and you're looking forward to the next morning when you wake up because you're making progress for you and your family. You're not slipping further behind. The last piece of advice I'll give is read Pillars of Wealth: How to Make, Save, and Invest Your Way to Financial Freedom. It's a book I wrote under Bigger Pockets Publishing, and it has a lot of the same advice I'm giving you right now in the book. You're not alone in the dilemma that you're having, but you are in a small group of badasses in that you're reaching out and asking for the help. So I want to commend you on that. All right, thanks everybody. We have another question coming up, but before we do, a super quick ad from our sponsor for today's show, Spartan League. Spartan League is a real estate university designed for those with 5 properties or less, though many of our members have much more than that. Those that join Spartan League get 5 calls a week on different types of real estate investing and real estate business training. You'll learn about how to BRRRR, how to do long distance real estate investing, how to budget your money, how to run a business, how to get into the world of real estate to make a living, how to flip properties, how to manage short-term, medium-term, and long-term rentals, and more. So if you're interested, visit SpartanLeague.com or DM me on Instagram the word Spartan. All right, our next question comes from Stefan in Orlando.
Hello. I have a 3-story loft across the street from Universal Studios that I use primarily as a rental property. I rent that on Airbnb and screen tenants for it. So should I purchase and buy, an ADU in the garage to make it instead of a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom rental, or purchase like a duplex or an entirely new property? I'm leaning towards a new property, but I would love to know your thoughts. Again, should I purchase a new property or convert a 3-bedroom loft into a 4th bedroom by converting the garage into a junior ADU?
Thanks, Stefan. I love this question. Love it. Here's what we're really getting at, folks. I've got some capital. Should I put it into an existing property that I have and make that property worth more? Or should I use it to buy a new property? Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of each before we talk about your specific situation here, Stefan. When you put the money into a new property, you're typically trying to gain wealth in 2 ways. You're trying to increase the value of the property you're putting money into, that's equity, and you're trying to increase the cash flow that you're getting out of it. I call this forcing cash flow in my book, The Cash Flow Critic, the 10 ways that you make money in real estate. Now, what we're really looking at is if you put the same amount of capital, in this case, let's call it $60,000, into an existing property, how much equity are you going to build and how much cash flow are you going to gain? We're then going to compare this to the other option of investing the $60,000 into a different property, like you said, a duplex. If you're putting 20% down, $60,000 will get you a $300,000 property. Now, the last thing we have to take into consideration is risk. There's usually less risk involved in putting the $60,000 into an existing property because you're not taking on more debt. When you buy a new property, you're taking on more debt. But debt isn't just risk. Debt is opportunity as well. You think about it, that $60,000 can get you a $300,000 asset of which you've taken on $240,000 or so of debt that will be paid off over time by the tenant. What does that mean? 30 years later, your tenants have paid off that $240,000, giving the money to you, as well as whatever appreciation you got on the asset. A $300,000 asset is going to appreciate over a 30-year period of time. Now, the property you have already is going to appreciate too. So in most cases, when you're looking at the long-term approach here, putting the money into a new property will build you more wealth. And that's because you can leverage debt. The downside is you're also taking on more risk. So this is what you have to ask yourself, Stefan. Is your financial picture strong enough that if you take on more risk for 5 years or so and things don't go well, that you can weather that storm? Or are you living paycheck to paycheck? Are you living rent payment to rent payment? In which case, putting that money into a new property might be foolish. Remember that the new property is coming with more debt and more appreciation, which means it's almost always going to be a better financial decision over a long period of time. Don't make just enough to live. Make enough that you can live with a really big safety net and save money. That way you can take bigger risks in real estate that result in bigger payoffs over a longer period of time. It's always about playing the long game in this space. All right, our next question comes from German in Rhode Island and Massachusetts.
Hey, David. Thanks for taking my question. Appreciate it. So my question is, why can't I feel confident about using my equity to stabilize my properties? Right now, I have a 3-family and a single-family house. The single-family house I'm house hacking right now. It has a garage, and on top of the garage, I would put another unit in. I have about $250K in equity. I want to use that equity to stabilize the 3-family and the single-family house, add that extra unit, increasing the cash flow on both properties. The returns sound good. I guess it's just getting past this idea of taking out more debt and risk in order to do it.
All right, German, great question. When I'm trying to understand concepts like within the world of real estate investing, I like to take numbers and turn them into pictures. It's just easier for me to understand. So when it comes to getting equity out of a property, I see in my mind a picture of 2 ways. You can pull it out through a financial product like a cash out refinance or a HELOC. You can get the money out of the property. It's like pulling water out of a bucket and putting it into a new bucket. Now, here's where people seem to choke in real estate investing. They have this idea that they're going to get their money out of a property without having to pay for it. They don't like capital gains. They don't like commissions. They don't like closing costs. They don't like debt that comes from HELOCs, and they don't like debt that comes from cash out refinances. So they get stuck with, I want to use my equity, but I don't want to pay for it. Equity in real estate is different than money in the bank that you can just move from account to account without having to pay anything for it. This is one of the benefits of having liquid assets like cash. This is why people like cash flow. The downside is the cash flow that comes from real estate, whether it's from rent payments or capital gains, gets taxed. It's why I keep recommending people to use the 3-pillar system. Make money, save money, invest money. As long as you're making money and you're saving money, you have more money to invest into these properties. When you get away from that, you put yourself in this really rough position where you're trying to improve investments with money from investments. And I'm telling you guys, it's expensive to do it. You're going to pay for it in capital gains. You're going to pay for it in closing costs and commissions, or you're going to pay for it with increased debt. Now, for so long, rates were so low that we didn't really have to accept this reality because you could pull money out of properties and often get a cheaper rate than what you had. So we had the best of both worlds. I could get equity out of a property and I could go from a 6.5% rate to a 3.5% rate. So I was taking money out and I was lowering my payment in some cases. It was crazy good, but we got used to crazy good. We started to think crazy good was normal. And this is why so many of us are struggling with what actually is normal. Rates in the 7s. I mean, they're in the 6s right now. They're still pretty low. It doesn't feel low though, because we got used to this. Now, German, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but let me tell you why it's probably better. This is going to get a fire lit under your keister. This is going to get you out there working harder, taking more risks, starting a new business, starting a side hustle, getting you out of your comfort zone because you realize you need more money to buy more real estate. It's also going to make you more disciplined. Thank you very much for the question. Let me know if you have a follow-up there. davidgreen24.com/ask. Let me ask you guys, do you relate to German's issue here, the fear of leverage? What if the fear of leverage is healthy? All right, moving on to the next segment of the show, the comment section. First comment comes from Mallory. How do you get over the fear about doing things wrong and getting sued? There's so many anti-landlord peeps out there. Ooh, that's a good one. Man, I'm being sued by a lot of people right now. I have a property management company that was stealing from me, and when they got caught, they sued me for breaching the contract, even though they have been doing terrible and stealing money. When people think you have money, they're going to sue you. And people think I have a lot of money, so lawsuits come pretty frequently. It's one thing you have to understand is it's probably going to happen. You shouldn't live in fear of it. But one thing you can do to keep yourself out of lawsuit is to be firm but fair. Be kind. Be empathetic. Start every sentence with, I know this is hard. I'm sure this is tough. Just don't actually give in on the hard line you got to hold. All right, next comment. Do you think getting Section 8 for a first rental is a good move? From Luke. I do think that it's a good move, actually. I was talking to Tracy Strike of Renter's Place in Oklahoma, and Tracy told me he's been crushing it with Section 8. He's having a great time with those tenants, and he would put everything under Section 8 if he could. Jimmy says, my favorite David Green concept is portfolio architecture. It changed my business. Thanks, David, with a whole bunch of exclamation points. All right, Jimmy, for the people who don't know, maybe I need to write a book about this someday, but portfolio architecture is one of my favorite things too. I actually gave a speech about it at Brandon Turner's Better Life conference, and it was a huge hit. People loved it. It's a way of looking at real estate that is different than just Control-C and then Control-V 20 times in a row. You don't want to own 40 or 50 single-family homes in C- neighborhoods. I had that at one point because I was taught, find something that works and just keep doing it. And what happened is I had this portfolio of properties that was big enough that it was causing me constant headaches, but not so big that it was making me a ton of money. It was stable enough that it was providing me enough cash flow to pay the mortgages, but not stable enough that it was providing me enough cash flow to just live off of it. Next comment comes from Jed, who says there's no hurry to buy and no hurry to sell. We'll let inventory build slowly in key markets, and I'll look for properties with large ADMs in cities with good long-term demographic tailwinds. I like that attitude. A lot of people are like, I hate my life. I hate my job. I hate my situation. I need more cash flow to get it better. And it forces them to buy bad deals. See, a lot of people buy deals from turnkey companies, and I say, why'd you do it? Well, I just needed to do something. And now they're stuck with a property that isn't appreciating, that they paid a little more than is actually worth, that doesn't cash flow enough to actually help them. All right, thanks everybody. A quick word from today's second show sponsor, The One Brokerage. If you want a loan to finance your real estate, it is simply the best mortgage company that I know of in the entire country. Send us an email at intake@theonebrokerage. Visit theonebrokerage.com or DM me on Instagram or Facebook and ask for an introduction, and I'll make one personally to the right loan officer for you. Moving on to the next segment of our show, quick hitters. Jay Korn said, flips, flops, or slides? Ooh, I don't know that I know the difference. I only wear sandals going to jiu-jitsu, or if I'm in Hawaii, they always rub my feet raw, so they're a problem for me. I'm typically wearing running shoes, and Brandon Turner is making fun of me all the time because everybody in Hawaii wears flip-flops and I don't. That's because I have really bad plantar fasciitis. My feet hurt a lot if I'm not careful. Kevin says, bring back the live streams. If you guys want to see me live stream on Instagram, I probably do it a couple times a week. Take your questions there and share things that are going on in my workday. You can follow me on your favorite social media at DavidGreen24. A design pet peeve from Georgia. You know, Georgia, I wish I had a design pet peeve. I'm not a fan of subway tile. Never have been. Maybe because I worked in public transit as a police officer and I saw how filthy the bathrooms are. And I'm like, why would anybody want their house to look like public anything? I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like the stick-on LVP that's like wallpaper on your floor, but it's not a huge thing. You know what my pet peeve is? It's people that don't care about financial freedom, the fundamentals of real estate, adding value to a property, but they get so worked up if they don't like the design. This is funny, right? My pet peeve is people that have a lot of pet peeves about design. All right, let's get into the next segment of the show. This is the viral clips of the week.
What's the difference between a money guy and a real builder? That's what that's supposed to say. A real builder knows the scope of the work. A money guy will never know the scope of the work. A real builder knows site work, foundation, frame, doors and windows, roof, your weather tight, your sheathings on the exterior. The next steps are rough plumbing. I go rough HVAC, rough plumbing, rough electrical. Everybody gets their sign-offs, we move to insulation. From insulation, we move to blue board and plaster. I know in some states you guys don't use blue board and plaster. Use tape and seam, whatever you're using. You start your finish work, you're off to finish work. Cabinets are going in, trim, doors first. Do your trim, doors, base, your wall paneling, whatever you're doing. And then you're off to cabinetry. Then you're off to your floors being, hopefully you're running your hardwood or whatever you're using under your cabinets. Don't be a cheap person and go to the cabinets. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. So when you really think about what I just said to you, does it seem really that hard? Painters come in, tile guys are coming in. Those are the steps to building. It's just a lot of work goes into those steps. And when you break it down like that, how could you not learn it?
All right, that clip comes from Cindy Stumpo. This is my first time ever hearing her content. And I got to say, that was incredibly impressive. She really did simplify the steps that go into completely new construction and left you with enough that if you wanted to do it, you know where to start. Like, you got a blueprint there. She gave you the basic steps, and then she said the key is knowing what to do in each of those steps. Who's going to do the work, and how do you make sure they do it well? And it's not easy, but it is simple. I mean, that's exactly what you want out of an educational video. She speaks quick. She doesn't waste your time. She sums things up really well. She gave you everything you needed and nothing that you didn't. So consider giving Cindy Stumpo on Instagram a follow. Well done, Cindy.
Soon, anyone under the age of 35 will not be able to own any real estate.
I think we're there now. I don't see how anybody who's making, let's say, the average wage with dual income can afford to buy a house, for example, without having help with the down payment from their parents. I think the biggest impediment, I would say, to this young generation buying a place is not that they can't afford the monthly payment. I think the ones that make good money, they find a way to make it work. It's scraping enough down payment
That's what
to be able to buy the place, and doing it fast enough where they're getting ahead of the market. If it took somebody 6 years to come up with a down payment, what they could have bought 6 years ago is a lot more than what they can afford today, right? And if they're trying to buy that exact same home, they need an even bigger down payment, so it take them even longer to come up with it. So I think one of the biggest challenges this younger generation will have is accumulating enough of a down payment to be able to do it. And if they don't have help from family, if they don't have kind of a gift that they can get to do that, it's going to be a struggle.
This video came from the Mansour Group on Instagram. Let's break down what they're talking about here a little bit. First off, totally agree. Coming up with the money for a down payment is harder than it's ever been before. Let's talk about the fact that it's hard to do it without help from your parents, and it's hard to do it in general. One thing to think about, there are certain cultures that keep wealth within their family. They make it a priority to teach their children how to maintain wealth. They don't spend money on stupid things. They make smart financial decisions, and they start giving their children responsibility over how to manage money at a young age. So the families that keep money in their family often have money to give their children as down payments for homes. Then those homes appreciate. That creates wealth so that they can give it to their kids. But this only works if you teach your kids how to not spill the water out of the financial buckets. All right, folks, the last segment of our show, David's Deal. Got a Burr property that I put into contract yesterday. It's small, about 1,100 square feet, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. It's actually in the Midwest, and I think it's going to rent for around $1,200 a month. It does have a fenced-in back patio that is already insulated. I was very surprised when I walked it, how it wasn't super hot. And the idea is to turn that into living space, maybe a master bed with another bathroom. So I'm going to turn a 3-1 into a 4-2, increase the ARV, slightly increase how much I can get for rent, and then do a cash out refinance. The house is going to need new paint, new flooring, new countertops, and a kitchen remodel, as well as that back unit included in square footage. I'll have to run HVAC to it. But there you go. That is my deal of the day. They don't all have to be huge home runs. Sometimes just getting on base and putting yourself in a good position leads to bigger wealth down the road. All right, everybody, thank you for listening to the show. Remember, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please go leave me a 5-star review. And if you're not, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcast. Even if you prefer to listen to it on YouTube, if you could subscribe, I will love you. And if you're not listening to it on YouTube, make sure you go subscribe to my channel over there as well. The show is called Real Talk Real Estate, and my YouTube channel is youtube.com/@DavidGreen24. Today's show, we covered if you should buy a new property or put the existing money into a one you already have, why it's so scary to pull equity out of properties to reinvest, what causes the price of real estate to go up or down, the mindset of winners in the marketplace, and games you can play with yourself to put you in a position where you don't feel as bad about the changes that need to be made to improve your financial picture. Remember, everyone, I do this because I love you and I want you to not have the stress that comes from not being happy in life, from not having enough money. And I think real estate is the best way for you to get there. Also, I promise I'm never going to BS you. I will always tell you guys the hard truth, and I think that's probably why you're here. If you'd like to be featured on the podcast, please head over to davidgreen24.com/ask. Submit your question so I can answer it for everybody to hear. And if you have a guest that you think would be great, or if you would like to be on the show yourself, go to davidgreen24.com/ask and let us know, or comment on YouTube and let us know. Lastly, if there was a part of the show that made you laugh, made you think, or made you inspired, let me know in the comments also. This is David Green for Real Talk Real Estate. See you on the next one. Thanks for listening to Real Talk Real Estate. If you would like to be featured on the podcast, I'd love to have you. Visit davidgreen24.com/ask and submit your question there. Also, please do me a huge favor and share the show with someone that you love that you think would benefit from this message, and make sure you're subscribed to get notified for future episodes. If you want to reach out directly, you can also DM me on Instagram or social media, and check out davidgreen24.com.